on Iran, I will also follow up on Brazil. So you say that the Iranians have swiftly killed the prospects of a swift return to JCPOA, and also you said your preference is diplomacy. And also you are saying that it's incredibly improbable that the Iranians are going to return to the table. So the question is, how can you convince us how the president is going to achieve his commitment that Iranians will not acquire a nuclear weapon while this situation right now is like this?
Well, history can be instructive. It can be instructive in a case like this when we have a long history of pursuing this road with our partners and allies vis-a-vis Iran. The reason we were able in 2012, 2013, ultimately 2013 and 2014 with the JPOA, subsequently with the JCPOA, to arrive at a diplomatic arrangement was because we worked with allies and partners around the world to put significant economic pressure on Iran. What ultimately brought Iran to the table was not a strategic change in mentality on the part of the regime. It was, I think, a realization that they were under tremendous economic duress, and rather than provide them with a strategic asset, their nuclear program at the time was a strategic liability. It's our goal to ensure that Iran continues to feel pressure until and unless it changes course. Now, you can do that as the United States. The last administration attempted to do that with the strategy of maximum pressure. That clearly didn't work. What history teaches us is that economic pressure is most effective when it's brought to bear with other allies and partners. And so that's why we've put such a premium on working with our European allies and partners, particularly with so-called E3, the French, the Brits, and the Germans in this case, but also bringing along other EU allies and partners, countries around the world, to see to it that until and unless the Iranian regime changes its approach, it is going to feel the condemnation, but even more importantly, the economic and diplomatic pressure of the rest of the world.
Yeah, but don't you think this roller coaster in the Western approach?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a follow-up on Brazil as well.
I want to follow up on Iran.
Okay, go ahead.
Don't you see this roller coaster in your approach, towards Iran's nuclear issues is the reason why we keep seeing Iran regime is holding sham trials, executing its own citizens because they don't get strongest message from the West in terms of potential consequences. You mentioned financial and other prices they might pay. Can you give us any example of, say, going after Iranian leaders and their children here in the United States financially and by other tangible steps that you have been taking?
Alex, we've taken a number of tangible steps, and we've announced some of those steps even in recent months. You already alluded to the actions we took last Friday against 7 Iranian individuals for their support to Iranian UAV proliferation networks. We've announced sanctions on Iran's petrochemical industry. We've announced sanctions on its oil production industry. We have announced very tangible actions. I haven't seen a roller coaster in terms of this administration. Our approach has been remarkably steady. Our approach has been to work day in, day out with allies and partners to present a united front to Iran.
But they did not prevent Mohammad Mehdi Karami, Mohammad Hussein from being executed. I mean, that's clear, not enough yet.
And Alex, there will be escalating costs for the Iranian regime. We're mixing apples and oranges just a bit here. We are talking about its nuclear program, but there are, of course, other hugely important challenges in the relationship, not the least of which is Iran's treatment of its own citizens. And this is something that has been put on display with the uprising of the Iranian people, the fact that so many of Iran's citizens, including at the vanguard, its women and girls, have taken to the streets. And we have seen the disdain that the Iranian regime has for its own people, the brutality with which it has treated its own people. You raised the most recent executions. look, we are appalled by Iran's executions of Mohammad Mehdi Karami and Mohammad Hosseini, and the sentencing, I should add, of additional individuals to death for involvement in protests. These two individuals were put to death following what can only be called sham trials, trials that were rushed, that lacked any fair trial guarantees. We condemn these executions in the strongest terms. But these executions are, in our estimation at least, a key component of Iranian authorities' brutal effort. Their brutal effort to suppress peaceful protests that began in September following the death of Mahsa Amini and the custody of the so-called morality police. We're deeply concerned that Iranian authorities may imminently execute other Iranians after sham trials that similarly lack fair trial guarantees, especially teenagers and youth, as part of their brutal crackdown. The young people of Iran, it is clear, are bearing the brunt of this repression, of this brutality. And we're aware of reports that several young people have had their sentences upheld and, as I mentioned, may be at imminent risk of execution. Rather than listen to the young people, to the women, to the girls of Iran, the regime is trying to silence them, and in some cases, the regime is even killing them.
Mm-hmm.